One phone call, one employee, nearly 1 million accounts exposed. The attacker didn't crack a password. They called Figure's IT desk, impersonated support, and directed the employee to a phishing site where they entered their credentials and MFA code. Figure holds financial data for nearly 1 million users. The SSO system they used gave that one authenticated session access to everything connected. But this wasn't a technology failure. It was a design feature. And that same architecture is protecting your organization right now. Here's what happened. Figure Technology Solutions is a fintech company that originates home equity loans. Not a startup. Not a fringe operation. A regulated lender handling personal financial data for close to 1 million users. In February 2026, Figure disclosed a data breach. The attack was social engineering, specifically vishing. An attacker called an employee, posed as IT support, and directed them to enter their credentials and MFA code on a site the attacker controlled. That gave the attacker an authenticated session inside Figure's systems through the company's SSO layer, one credential, every connected application. Figure confirmed the incident through regulatory disclosure. Bleeping Computer, Security Week, and UpGuard documented it independently. This is not speculation, this already happened. 967,200 accounts. Let's be precise about what was in them. The confirmed exposed data includes names, email addresses, phone numbers, physical addresses, and dates of birth, not login credentials that reset with a password change. Personal identifying information, the data used to verify identity across financial systems, open new accounts, and pass security questions at institutions that don't yet know a breach occurred. For a fintech company, this data is the product. Figure's business model requires collecting identifying information from every user who applies for a loan. That data is the value of the platform. In the wrong hands, it is the raw material for account takeover attempts, fraudulent account openings, and identity fraud at institutions where these individuals are not yet known to be compromised. The attacker didn't steal a password. They stole the information that makes a person verifiable to financial systems. Therefore, the question is not just what happened to Figure. The question is why one social engineering call was worth 967,200 people's identities. That answer is in the architecture. To understand why one vishing call reached nearly 1 million accounts, you need to understand what SSO actually does. Single sign-on is an identity architecture where one authenticated session unlocks every connected application. Email, customer records, internal systems, file access, the entire connected stack, one login, every door. The design logic is sound. Fewer credentials means fewer breach vectors. Simpler access management means less operational friction. But the design assumption contains a hidden trade. Fewer credentials doesn't mean less exposure. It means concentrated exposure. SSO is a master key. Vishing is a fake locksmith, one convincing call, one phishing portal, one MFA code entered. The attacker holds the master key. The attack method is not exotic. The attacker called the employee, posed as IT support, directed them to a site that looked legitimate. The employee entered their credentials and MFA code. The attacker now held an authenticated session. The New York Department of Financial Services flagged this exact attack category in a February 2026 Cybersecurity advisory to regulated entities. Targeted vishing attacks designed to capture credentials and MFA codes through phishing portals. This was not a novel threat. It was a documented, active, regulator-flagged pattern. Therefore, the failure was not the employee's judgment. The failure was an architecture where one employee's authenticated session was worth 967,200 accounts. Here's what most breach postmortems miss. This was not a figure problem. This was an architecture problem. The SSO design that concentrated figures risk is the default identity architecture across thousands of enterprise environments. Okta, Azure Active Directory, Google Workspace. Every major identity provider ships SSO as the standard. Every organization that has adopted it carries the same single credential blast radius. But the exposure doesn't stop at the architecture. The attack method, vishing combined with a phishing portal to capture MFA, is not rare. Security Week documented over 100 organizations targeted in a single shiny hunters phishing campaign using this same attack chain. The tooling is commercial, the targeting is researched, the scripts are professionally produced. What happened to Figure's users is a template. The playbook is available, the architecture is standard. The only variable is which organization is next. Before we get to what actually stops this, most security frameworks treat vishing as a training problem. Annual awareness sessions, simulated phishing emails. The assumption, an educated employee won't fall for a social engineering call or a convincing phishing portal. Figure's breach challenges that assumption directly. This was a professional fintech environment. Regulated. Compliance-aware. The employee fell for the call. However, the question is not why the employee fell for it. The question is why one employee falling for it was worth nearly 1 million accounts. That is a governance question, not a training question. 3 controls that should have changed the blast radius. Control 1, privileged access tiering. SSO admin credentials should be structurally separated from daily operational credentials. The credential an employee uses to check email, access Slack, or manage routine tasks should not reach admin-level functions across the connected stack. Admin-level identity actions require a separate credential, verified through a channel outside the SSO environment and outside any site an attacker can build. In practice, if Figure had tiered access in place, a compromised daily credential captured through a phishing portal would not have reached the full connected system. The blast radius would have been bounded by architecture, not by hoping the targeted employee wasn't on shift. Control 2. MFA verification through a phishing-resistant channel. The attacker obtained the employee's MFA code by directing them to a phishing portal. The MFA code was entered there and confirmed an authenticated session for the attacker. Standard TOTP-based MFA, time-based one-time codes, is capturable through a phishing portal in real time. The attacker's site passes the code to the real system before it expires. Phishing-resistant MFA means the second factor is bound to the legitimate domain. Hardware security keys using FIDO2. Passkeys bound to the authenticating device. These factors cannot be replayed through a phishing portal because they verify the domain, not just the user. If the second factor cannot be captured by controlling a website, this specific attack chain breaks. Control 3. Blast radius audit. Map every application connected to your SSO provider. The exercise exists to answer one question. If any SSO credential were compromised right now, what could an attacker access? That map identifies which applications carry enough consequence to require authentication controls independent of the SSO layer, a second gate that stands regardless of how the identity provider is configured. Most organizations have not done this exercise. Most cannot answer the question. None of these are advanced controls. All 3 appear in published security guidance. The NYDFS February 2026 advisory specifically addresses the vishing plus phishing portal attack chain as an active threat requiring defensive architecture, not just awareness training. The gap is not knowledge. The gap is deployment. Here is a question most security reviews never ask. Who in your organization has SSO admin access right now? Not who should have it. Not who had it when it was originally assigned. Who actually has it at this moment? Access lists drift. Contractors finish engagements with credentials still active. Employees change roles without access being revoked. Temporary elevated permissions become permanent through inaction. Every account on that list is a potential vishing target. Everyone holds a credential that, if compromised through a phishing portal, reaches your entire connected stack. Most organizations cannot answer this question with confidence. The inability to answer it is itself an exposure. The immediate action is not a project. Pull your SSO admin access list this week. Not the policy document, the live list. Count the accounts. Ask whether each one requires that level of access today, not when it was originally assigned. Then, ask whether any of those accounts are protected only by TOTP-based MFA that a phishing portal could capture in real time. That is the figure failure mode. That is what you are looking for. Figure disclosed the breach. Notified affected users. Cooperated with the investigation. That is the correct post-breach response. But the correct pre-breach response is architecture. One authenticated session should not reach 967,200 accounts. If yours can, you have the same exposure figure had in February. SSO is not a security upgrade. It is a trade. You trade password sprawl for architectural concentration. Fewer credentials to manage. One authenticated session to protect. Figure made that trade. Most organizations have made the same trade. The question is not whether to make it. SSO is the enterprise standard. The question is whether the architecture surrounding it accounts for human fallibility, because attackers already have. They are not trying to break the technology. They are calling the employee. They are building the phishing portal. They are waiting for the MFA code. One call. One employee. 967,200 accounts. The technology worked exactly as designed. The design assumption was wrong. ScamBeast analyzes fraud patterns and governance failures using primary sources. If you work in finance, technology, or leadership, follow the channel. Sources for this episode are in the description. Figures regulatory disclosure, Bleeping Computer, Security Week, UpGuard, the NYDFS, February 2026, Vishing Advisory. Read them.